Good evening, everybody. How are we doing? Two things before we get started. Firstly, for those of you who are new, what we tend to do to cover the normally slightly awkward opening 10 minutes of "Hi, how is the internet?" through a time lag is just like a little monologue. And this week it's called "I Am the Horrible Goose That Lives in the Town" by Daniel Lavery. And oh yes, this is some fun, trust me. And was going to be a second thing. Yes, I know what it is. I have remembered. We just got our first legit hype train incoming. I am super happy. The setting on OBS which we're on now is called Camera Big. Peter Lucas fans, you're welcome. Shall we? I Am the Horrible Goose That Lives in the Town by Daniel Lavery. I am the horrible creeping bag of sound that is the most worst to you. I will use my beak to mischief you, and I will press B. I wobble my snake front body, and I waggle my bag back body, and they meet in the middle to plan a bad idea to upset you. I flap back and forth my business rear for balancing, and I snapple pap my feet all up and down the town for terrible reasons, and you don't like it. I am the goose, and you are the miserable boy with no honk. I invented my body, and it was the best idea. Honk! Honk! I flap open my back in celebration when I make victory over the fence, when I smash it from its lock, when I smash it down, when I undo all of your doing. Here I honk. I hold up all of my wings, and I make more layers of me, the goose that hates your family. These are the keys that you do not have. I am flat and racing over the earth, and you are all the way stood up, all the way confused, all the way overalls and no ideas. I make a fight between myself and your memory. I wet your feet because I do not respect them. I wet them with a lake, and I am lake satisfaction. Your garden? I make it terrible. I make a puzzle of your garden. I hustle up your carrots and remove all rakes for a punishment to you. Theft puts a parade into my walk. I am so proud to steal from you and your bad family, who are no good to me and are not geese. I am the most goose who ever was. And I am enough goose for the whole town, because I am a little white heartbeat that moves very fast, more fast than anything else, for surprises. My business is the worst business, and you have it. Here I come. I'll take any big thing, small thing meant for hiding, widest thing, right in my beak and hustle it away from your permission, because I don't agree with property, and I never have. Here I come again. You cannot anticipate me because your brain is so big and weighty and far from the ground, but my brain is aerodynamic and small and ground sure, and I have all I need in my wicked goose body, and also I have your radio. Where is the boy for me to disrespect? I am his least friend. I see his games and I contempt them. I ruin his life. Glasses for him? No. Shoelaces for him? No. I make every escape. I am the pest of his whole awful body, but my body is so smooth and good. My body works. My body is the softest triangle with a hose attached, strong and useful and all the way, sweetheart. You need everything, but I have it. I put my honk in a jar, so there is more honk. I honk at you. I honk directly up to God, and I will never leave. You will never be well again, and I will trouble your father all of the time. I am all the triumph. I am the most successful goose, and you are misery with suffering and hopeless with loss. I have the beautiful bell in my mouth, and your mouth is so empty, because you hate me, the great goose with a mouth. I am tremendous. Here I am coming with the good news of me, and you hate it. You can think only of the bell and of how much I have it, and you are never the goose. I will run around with my bell as much as I want, and you will make despair. Here comes the goose. Here comes the goose bell. Everybody be awake to the goose now, and from now on. You liked this village so much before the goose came and ironed over all of your peace, but I'll bring soda can and boot trash into your bed and mouth. You'll never be the goose, and I already am the goose, as most as a goose can be, all coiled up and ready to ungoose again. I thank you. Right, how is everybody? We all doing okay? We're trying something a little bit different at the top. I'm going to tell you about some of the things which have been happening with me this week. Because isn't that such a lovely, lovely piece? I love that to tiny pieces. After a suspiciously quiet week, which I really should have seen coming, basically my work's exploded. The current state of play I have is there is the novel, which needs to be revised. There's the Doctor Who academic book, which needs to finish being drafted. I've also been approached by a pop culture site, which I almost worked for the last iteration of, and their new editor is someone I've worked with before, so it looks like I'm going to be getting some stuff there, which is great. I also am submitting a pitch to the Big Finish Paul Maggs Memorial Competition. Those of you who don't know, Big Finish are the company who do the Doctor Who audio plays, and every year they do a competition where basically the prize is you are paid to write a 1-episode play, and I've got an idea I'm fairly happy with, and which in the time I have allowed, I can be much, much happier with. We also have an opportunity coming in with a fairly major site to pitch for a long-term column there, which we're trying to hammer out the details of, and I might possibly be writing my first piece of comics journalism in years. Column pitch, who book, Big Finish. Yeah, that's it. Just only 5 things, only 3 of which have arrived in the last 24 hours. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. It's actually going okay. My normal trajectory for these things is, oh god, I can't do it. No, wait, I can. I have perhaps remembered how to words. And we're pretty much there at the moment. So it's just a matter of rigid time management, frequent tea, occasional bits of caffeine, and I'll be good to go. So, for those of you joining us this week, basically 2 things. First off, this is for everybody. Is everybody hydrated? And has everybody taken any meds they need to take? All that kind of stuff. Basically, just get comfortable, because this is profoundly unsettling stuff, and I don't want you to feel any kind of out of place. Then the story is any more out of place rather than the story is designed to make you feel. And secondly, let's give you a quick recap. Search and Rescue is an. Oh, hold on. We have recap cam.
Dun, dun, dun.
Da! Search and Rescue is a collection of short recollections, supposedly an interview, with a search and rescue officer who works in an unnamed area of the American National Park Service. And what becomes apparent across the course of the first couple of parts is that this individual, and I love that they are carefully not gendered, deals with all sorts of really horrible stuff, an awful lot of which is mundane, just in that kind of general everyday tragedy kind of way, and some of which absolutely is not. And the gradual shift over into disturbing is really, really, really well done, and continues here in part 3. That leads me neatly to our next new feature, which is a content warning. This episode features a lot of death. None of it is on screen, metaphorically speaking. None of it is stuff that you participate, but there are a lot of bodies found, and an awful lot of them are children, and several of them are babies. And one of them is a child with who has physical issues prior to death. So, if any of that makes you feel remotely uncomfortable, please step away for a week. No one is going to think badly of you at all. And, everyone has their comfort breaks, and I would much, much rather have people go into this story forewarned than go, surprise, why are you crying? Because that is the worst, least responsible type of horror fiction there is, and I don't do that. Okay, so, recap, content warning, water and meds, what's going on with Alistair, terrifying goose. I think that's everything. It's time for the lighting. There will now be a small. Here we go.
Purple today, you think?
Purple today.
Can anybody in the chat read this in the background? Maybe if I move it a little bit more.
Oh, yeah, we have decor.
It may be too far away to actually read.
This is a very small light board.
Oh no. Alright.
Just take it from us. It says search and rescue. Search and rescue by my head.
Search and rescue on your head. How about that?
There we are. That's actually a really good screenshot.
Oh yeah, I might have to do that. Maybe we'll do that with the recap board. I can put it over.
There you go.
I'll think about it.
2 things before we jump in. Firstly, I'm seeing a few people in the chat saying thank you for the content warnings. I'm really glad that they work for you, and like I say, it's a burden of care that is unique to horror fiction, and it's one we try and take very seriously. And secondly, have we secured the evil door? Yes, Scott, we have.
Yeah, I like...
With the welder.
No, not quite that bad, but I did make sure the windows were closed and put something heavy against it and make sure it's not actually going to open tonight, I hope.
It's all fine. It's all fine.
There's a lot of
Anyway.
A lot of people in the chat are talking about heavy rainstorms and power flickering. That's not our fault.
It's not us. I swear it's not us, okay?
I hope so. That's where the bedroom is. And so it would be very difficult if I can't open the evil door. I won't be able to... Of course we have defensive weaponry. Who do you take us for? Hello? I mean, I suppose I could brandish a gavel at people, but that just seems kind of silly.
Yeah, she does legitimately have a gavel.
Of course I have a gavel. They hand them out for free when you go to law school, right? Honest.
Of course they do. It's your graduation gavel. Here's your hat. Here's your gown. Here's your business cards. Here's your gavel.
Okay.
Go forth in justice. Yeah, you absolutely should hang it on a chain and wear it as a necklace. She's thinking about that one, and while she's thinking about that one, let's make a start. Search and Rescue by Kerry Hammond. Part 3. Well, once again, you guys have blown me away with your staggering amount of responses to my stories. There's no way I can respond to you individually, I'm afraid. So I'm just going to address some common things again, and then we'll move on. I'm going to write as many as I can think of, in addition to my friends' stories, and I probably won't get a chance to update again until I can answer some questions that I myself have for my superiors. Right, common questions I found you all had. First off, I am not comfortable talking about exactly where I work, unfortunately. In all reality, some of the things I mentioned here could get me in a lot of trouble or fired, so it's best I just don't discuss too much. I will say that I'm in the United States, and I will say I am in an area that is comprised of a great deal of wilderness. We are talking hundreds of miles of thick forest with a mountain range and a few lakes. There is still a great amount of interest in the stairs. And luckily for you, luckily for you guys, my friend has a story that I think you'll all be really interested in. I'll go into that a little bit more closer to the end of the update. As for whether or not I've ever thought of asking my superiors about them, I have. But again, don't want to risk my job. However, one of my former superiors no longer works as an SAR officer, and it's possible he may be willing to talk to me about it. I'll be speaking to him later in the week, and I will let you all know what comes of that. As far as advice on becoming an SAR officer goes, I think the best advice I can give you is to contact your local Forest Service office and see if they offer training courses, or what the qualifications are. I have to be honest, I've been doing this for years, and I started out as a volunteer helping out on SAR ops, and it's a great job, despite the occasional tragic situations, and I wouldn't want to do anything else, so if you're interested, do look into it. Anyway, let's move on to the stories. The first happened on a case that I went out on right after I got out of training, and I was still brand new to everything. Before I took this job, I was a volunteer, so I had a basic idea of what to expect. But on those calls, you're mostly dealing with finding lost people after vets have found signs of them. As an SAR officer, you go out for all kinds of cases, from animal bites to heart attacks. And this one, we got called in on early in the morning. It was a young couple who were up on one of the trails that goes by the lake. The husband was completely hysterical, and we couldn't figure out what was going on. we could hear the woman, and she was screaming in the background, and he was begging us to come up there right away. So we go, and when we get there, we see him holding his wife, and she's got something in her arms. She is screaming these awful, almost animal-like screams, and he's sobbing. He sees us, and he screams at us to help them to please get an ambulance up there. Now, obviously, we can't just drive an ambulance up the walking path, so we ask him if his wife needs help or if she can walk on her own. He's still hysterical, but he manages to tell us that it's not his wife that needs help. I go over while one of the vets tries to calm him down, and I ask the wife what's going on, and she is just rocking, holding something and shrieking over and over. I crouch down and I see that whatever she's holding, it's covering her with blood. And that's when I notice the sling on her front, and my heart sinks. I ask her to tell me what's going on, and I sort of try and pry her arms gently open so I can see what she's holding, and it's her baby, obviously dead. His head is caved in on one side, and he's covered in scratches. Now, I've seen dead bodies before, but there is something about this one that just hits me hard, and I have to take a second to compose myself. So I get up, and I go get one of the vets who was standing by, and I tell him it's a dead kid, and he kind of pats me on the shoulder and says, "It's okay, I'll deal with it." It took us over an hour to get this woman to let us see her kid. Every time we try to take him from her, she flips out and tells us we can't have him, that he'll be okay if we just leave her alone and let her help him, but eventually one of the vets manages to calm her down and she gives us the body. We took it back to the med area, but when the EMTs showed up, they told us there was never any hope of saving the kid. He died instantly from the trauma to his head. I was good buddies with one of the nurses who met them at the hospital, and later she told me what had happened. Turns out the couple had been walking with the baby in the sling, and they stopped because the kid was fussing. The dad takes the kid and is holding him, looking out over this little gully by the path. The mom comes to stand next to him, but she ends up stepping on a loose patch of soil, and she trips, and she falls into the dad, who drops the kid, who ends up falling 20 feet down this little gully onto the rocks at the bottom. The dad climbed down and recovered the kid, but he had fallen right on his head, and he was dead by the time he got there. Baby was 15 months old. It was a total freak accident, a series of events that coalesced into the worst possible outcome, and probably one of the more awful calls I've been on. I haven't seen a lot of animal bites in my time as an SAR officer, mostly because there aren't that many animals that come around the area. I mean, there are bears, but they tend to stay pretty far away from people, and sightings are highly unusual. Most of the animals you'll see are small ones: coyotes, raccoons, skunks. What we do see frequently, though, are moose. And let me tell you, moose are nasty fuckers. They will chase after anything for any reason, and God help you if you get in between a female and its baby. One of the more amusing calls was a guy who got chased down by this absolutely massive male moose and was stuck up a tree. Took us almost an hour to get him down, and when he was finally on solid ground again, he looks at me and he says, "God damn, them fuckers is big up close." I guess that's not really a scary story, but we still laugh about that one. This one's weird. I honestly don't know how I'd forgotten it, but it is by far the scariest thing that's happened to me. I guess maybe I've tried so long to forget about it that it just didn't come to mind right away. As someone who spends literally all of their time alone in the woods, you don't ever want to let yourself get scared of being alone or out in the middle of nowhere. That's why when you have experiences like this one, you tend to just forget about them and move on. This is, to date, the only thing that's ever made me seriously consider if this job is the right one for me. And I don't like talking about it much, but I'll do the best I can to remember it all because, well, as I recall, this took place right at the end of spring. It was a typical lost child call. A 4-year-old girl had wandered away from her family's campsite and had been missing for about 2 hours. Her parents were despondent, told us what most parents do. My kid would never wander away. She's so good about staying close. She's never done anything like this before. We assure the parents that we'll do everything we can to find her, and we spread out, standard search formation. Now, I was partnered with one of my good buddies, and we were sort of casually holding conversation while we hiked. I know, it sounds callous, right? But you kind of become desensitized when you've done this work long enough. It becomes the norm. And I think to a certain extent you have to learn to desensitize yourself in order to work this job. So we search for a good 2 hours, going well beyond where we think she'd be, and we come out of a small valley when something makes us both stop in unison. We freeze. We look at each other, and there is this sensation, like a plane depressurizing. My ears actually pop, and I have this odd sensation of having dropped about 10 feet. I start to ask my buddy if he felt that, but before I can, we hear the loudest sound I have ever heard in my life. It's almost like a freight train passing directly by us, but it's coming from every direction at once, including above and below. He screams something to me, but I can't hear him over this deafening roar. And understandably freaked out, we look all around us trying to find the source of the sound, but there's nothing. Neither of us sees anything. And of course, my first thought is landslide. We're not near any cliffs. And even if we were, it would have hit us by now. The sound just goes on, and we are trying to yell to each other, but even standing close together, we can't hear anything but this sound. And then, as suddenly as it starts, it stops. I was like someone threw a switch and cut it off. We stand there for a second, perfectly still, and slowly the normal sounds of the woods come back. And not unreasonably, he asks me, "What the fuck just happened?" But I just kind of shrug, and we stand there looking at each other for a minute. I get on the radio and ask if anyone else just heard the end of the fucking world, but no one else hears it, even though we're all within shouting distance of each other. So my buddy and I shrug it off and keep going. About an hour later, we all check up on the radios. No one's found the little girl. Most of the time, we won't search when it gets dark, but because we don't have any kind of lead on her, a few of us decide to keep going, including me and my buddy. We keep close together. We're calling out for every couple of minutes, and at this point, I am hoping beyond hope that we find her, because, I don't like kids, but the idea of them being out all alone in the dark, it's awful. The woods can be intimidating to kids in the daytime. At night, it's a whole different beast. We're not seeing any signs of her, though, and we're not getting any responses. And around midnight, we decide to turn around and head back to the rendezvous point. We're about halfway back when my buddy stops and shines his light to the right of us into this really thick deadfall. So it's a group of dead trees. I ask him if he's heard a response, but he just tells me to be quiet a second and listen. I do. And in the distance, I hear what sounded like a kid crying. Now, we both obviously call the girl's name, listen for any kind of response, but it's just this really faint crying. We head in the direction of this deadfall and go around it, and we're calling her name over and over now. We get closer to the crying, and I start getting this weird feeling in my gut. And I tell my buddy that something doesn't feel right, and he tells me he feels the same way. Neither one of us can figure out what it is. But we stop where we are, and we call the girl's name again. And at the same time, we both figure it out. The crying is on a loop. It's the same little hitching sob then wail, then quiet hiccup repeated over and over. It's exactly the same every time. And without saying another word, we both take off running. It's the only time I have ever lost my composure like that, but something about it was so incredibly wrong, and neither of us wanted to be there anymore. So we get back to the rendezvous and we ask if anyone else had heard anything strange. No one else knew what we were talking about. I know it sounds kind of anticlimactic, but that call fucked me up for a long time. As for the little girl, we never found a trace of her. We keep an eye out for her, and all the other people we've never found, but frankly I doubt we'll ever find anything. Of the missing persons calls I've gone out on, only a handful have ever resulted in a complete disappearance, meaning no trace of the person and nobody ever found. But sometimes finding a body leads to more questions than answers. Here are some of the bodies we have found that have become infamous among our team. A teenage boy whose remains were recovered almost a year after he vanished. We found the top of his skull, 2 finger bones, and his camera almost 40 miles from where he was last seen. The camera was destroyed. The pelvis of an older man who had vanished a month earlier. That's all we found. The lower jaw and right foot of a 2-year-old boy on the highest peak of a ridge in the southern part of the park. The body of a 10-year-old girl with Down syndrome, almost 20 miles from where she'd vanished. She died of exposure 3 weeks after going missing, and all of her clothes were intact, except for her shoes and jacket. There were berries and cooked meat in her stomach when they did the autopsy. The coroner said it appears as if someone had been taking care of her. No suspects were ever identified. The frozen body of a 1-year-old baby, found a week after vanishing in the hollow trunk of a tree 10 miles from the area he was seen last. There was fresh milk found in his stomach. His tongue was gone. A single vertebrae and right kneecap of a 3-year-old girl found in the snow almost 20 miles from the campground her family had been at the previous summer. Now, on to a couple of the stories my friends told me. I mentioned that you were all interested in the stairs. You're in luck. He's had a closer encounter with them, though he doesn't have any explanation for them. He does have a little bit more experience with them than I do. My buddy has been an SAR officer for about 7 years. He started when he was a junior in college, and he had a very similar experience to me when he first encountered the stairs. In fact, his trainer told him almost the exact same thing mine did, which was never go up them, never go near them, don't touch them, don't descend them. For the first year, he did just that. But apparently his curiosity got the better of him, and on one call he broke away from the line and he went to go check a set of them out. He said they were about 10 miles from the path where a teenage girl had vanished, and the dogs were following a scent. He was on his own, lagging behind the main group, when he saw a set of stairs off to his left. They looked, he said, like they were from a new house, because the carpeting was pristine and white. He said that as he got closer, he didn't feel any different or hear any weird noises. I mean, he was expecting something to happen, like bleeding from his ears or collapsing, but he got right up next to them and didn't feel anything. The only thing he said that was odd was that there was absolutely no debris on the steps. No dirt, leaves, dust, anything. And there didn't appear to be any signs of insect or animal activity in the immediate area, and that was what really struck him as odd. It was less like things were avoiding them and more like they just happened to be in a relatively barren part of the forest. He touched the stairs and didn't feel anything except that sort of sticky feeling you get from new carpet. He made sure his radio was on, and he slowly climbed the stairs, and he said it was terrifying because of the way they'd been stigmatized. He really wasn't sure what was going to happen to him, in fact. He joked that half of him expected to be teleported to some other dimension, and the other half was waiting for a UFO to come swooping down. But he got to the top with a little event, and he stood there, looking around. But he said the longer he stood on the top step, the more he felt like he was doing something very, very wrong. He described it as the feeling you would get if you were in a part of a government building you have no business being in, as if someone was going to come and arrest you or shoot you in the back of the head at any second. He tried to brush it off, but the feeling got stronger and stronger, and that was when he realized he couldn't hear anything anymore. The sounds of the forest were gone. He couldn't hear his own breathing. It was like some kind of weird, awful tinnitus, but more oppressive. He climbed back down, rejoined the search, and didn't mention what he'd done. Here's the weird part. His trainer was waiting back at the welcome center after the search ended for the day, and he cornered my buddy before he could leave. He said his trainer had this look of intense anger, and he asked what was wrong. "You went up them, didn't you?" My buddy said it wasn't phrased as a question. He asked how his trainer knew. The trainer just shook his head. "Because we didn't find her. The dog lost her scent." My buddy asked what that had to do with anything. The trainer asked how long he'd been on the stairs. My buddy said no more than a minute. The trainer gave him this really awful, almost dead-eyed look and told him that if he ever went up another set of stairs again, he'd be fired immediately. The trainer walked away, and I guess he's never answered any of the questions my buddy has asked him about it since. Now, my guy has been involved in a lot of missing persons cases where there's never been a trace of them found. I mentioned David Paulides, and my buddy said he can confirm that those stories are, for the most part, accurate. He said most of the time, if the person isn't found right away, they're never found. Or they're found weeks, months, or years later in places they can't possibly have gotten to. There's one story in particular he told me that really stood out, that involved a 5-year-old boy with a severe mental disability. This little boy vanished from a picnic area in the late fall. In addition to the mental disability, he was also physically handicapped, and his parents explained over and over that he simply could not have vanished. It was impossible. Someone had to have taken him. My buddy said they searched for this kid for weeks, going miles out of the accepted range, but it was like he'd never been there. The dogs couldn't pick up his scent anywhere, not even in the picnic area where he'd apparently vanished. Suspicion fell on the parents, obviously, but it was pretty clear they were devastated and hadn't done anything sinister to their kid. The search was concluded after about a month. My buddy said everyone had pretty much forgotten it by later in the winter. He was out on a training op in the snow on one of the higher peaks when he came across something. He said he saw it from far away at first, and when he got closer, he realized it was a shirt, frozen and sticking part way out of the powder. He recognized it as belonging to the kid because it had a distinctive pattern. About 20 yards away, he found the kid's body, lying partially buried in the snow. My buddy said there was no way the kid had been dead for any more than a few days, though he'd been missing for almost 3 months. The kid was killed around something, and when my buddy brushed off the snow to see what it was, he said he almost couldn't believe what he was seeing. It was a big chunk of ice, and it had been carved, crudely, to look sort of like a person. The kid was holding it so tight it had frostbitten his chest and hands, which my buddy could tell even with the decay that had taken place. He radioed the rest of the crew and they took the body off the mountain. Now, he recapped all of this for me, and put it simply, there was no way this kid could have both survived for almost 3 months on his own or have gotten to the peak. There was no physical way this child could have walked 50 miles and ended up on top of a goddamn mountain. To top it off, there was nothing in the kid's stomach or colon. Nothing. Nothing. There wasn't even water. It was like my buddy had said. The kid had been taken off the face of the earth, put in suspended animation, and dropped on this mountain months later, only to die of exposure. He never got over that one. I can understand why. The last story I'll share from him was one that took place relatively recently. In fact, only a few months ago. They were out doing a recon for mountain lions because there had been several reports of sightings in the last couple of days. Now, one of our jobs is to scout out the areas where these animals are seen to ensure that if they are in the area, we can warn people off and close off those trails. He was out on his own in a very, very heavily forested part of the park towards dusk when he heard what sounded like a woman screaming in the distance. Now, as most of you know, when a mountain lion screams, it sounds almost exactly like a woman being brutally murdered. It's unsettling, but it's far from abnormal. My buddy radioed back and let Ops know that he'd heard one and that he was going to keep going to see if he could figure out where its territory started. He heard the mountain lion scream a couple more times, always from the same spot, and determined the approximate area of the mountain lion's territory. He was about to head back. And that was when he heard another scream, this time within a few yards of him. Now, of course, he freaks out and starts heading back at a much, much faster pace, because the last thing he wants to do is run into a goddamn mountain lion and get mauled to death. As he got back on the path and started heading back, though, the screaming followed him. So he started running. When he was about a mile from Ops, the screaming stopped, and he turned around to see if it was following him. It was almost night by this point, but he said, in the distance, just before the path rounded a corner, he could see what looked like a male figure. He called out to them, warned them that the paths were closed and that he needed to come back to the welcome center, and the figure just stood there. So, after a while, my buddy started to walk over, and when he was about 10 yards away, the figure took, as he described, an impossibly long step towards him and let out the same scream my buddy had been hearing all night. My buddy didn't even say anything. He just turned and sprinted back to Ops, didn't even look behind him. By the time he got back, the screaming had moved back into the woods. He didn't mention it to anyone else, just said there was a mountain lion in the area and moved on. Just that they would need to close those paths until the animal could be located and moved. Now, this is kind of a huge wall of text, so I'm going to end this entry here. And also, I'm going to be heading out on a yearly training op tomorrow morning, so I'll be gone until early next week. But I'm going to be meeting with a lot of former trainers and buddies who work in other areas of the park, and I'll be asking around about any stories they'd like to share. I'm so glad you guys have been interested in these stories, and once I'm back from this op, I promise you I'll continue to share them. And that's the end of part 3. I'm just taking a brief break and seeing whether...
Because that's half of it. Part 4 is that again, isn't it?
Yeah, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Is that again?
It's 9 pages. Yeah, I think we should probably bring it to land at that point.
I think that's fine. I mean, we've been on for about 40 minutes now, so...
So there we are. Search and Rescue Part 3, folks. Is someone being murdered outside of my house, or is it the local wildlife? That is the name of the best possible self-help self-help guidebook to living in rural communities I have ever heard. Oh, don't be in a tent alone in the middle of the night when thinking about this stuff. I have enough trouble when I wake up at 4 in the morning going, hey, remember that horror story? Yeah, you do now.
Hey, you remember that bear? You do now.
Have we told them about the bear?
Oh, no. Tell them about the bear.
So, when Marguerite and I first got together, this involved a couple of hilarious bits of logistics, which included me basically living out in the US for 3 months. And one of the first things that we did was take a long weekend in Yosemite National Park.
You never changed it back to the...
Oh,
You've left it on the recap the whole time.
I'm sorry. I'm really sorry.
That's fine. That was a very long recap.
It was a very long recap. But we had a long weekend in what's called a tent cabin in Yosemite. And in fact, I'm going to put it back on Peter Lucas cam now. There we are. No, I feel really bad about that.
No, it's okay.
Tent cabins are hilarious because they are tents with ideas above their station. They have a floor. That's literally it. They have a floor.
No, they're nicer than that.
They are nicer than that, in fairness. Now, I have never been... Camping, or basically anywhere prior to this. So this was just an endless cavalcade of exciting new experiences for me.
Like Elevation.
Like Elevation, where, I had 12 hours of, am I dying, or are we just thousands of feet above sea level? Oh, we're just thousands of feet above sea level. And so we pull up to the tent cabin, and there's a safe outside. And I asked Marguerite what this is, and she explained it's a bear locker, and how anything with an odor has to go in the bear locker, because otherwise the bears will just eat it. Because they're bears. What's going to get in the way, Now, so we put everything in there, but in doing so, I spill a little bit of milk on the top of the locker. We wipe it down. Don't think anything of it. 3 o'clock in the morning. I wake up to snuffling outside. And, like I say, I'm from England. The only animals larger than us here are cows and horses. I know what those sound like. It's not one of them. So I'm lying there going, should I have a problem with this? I mean, I don't want to pee. That's a good thing. And this snuffling and this obviously... What is the word? Chungus bear.
Chungus.
He's trundling around the locker and obviously gets to the bear locker. And I hear it lap up the milk. And at this point, I'm like, that's awesome. Also, I'm terrified. It's time to be asleep again. And woke up the next morning, and the spill on top of the locker had been completely cleaned. And it had been, like I say, this bear had just circled the tent going, is it worth me breaking in and eating them? Nah. They spilled some milk, I'll have that.
And then the other thing they do is they jump up and down on the cars in the parking lots because people don't remember that things like chapstick and sunblock have scents, and therefore the cars get broken into.
Genuinely, one of the funniest bits of footage I've ever seen was
your computer
was my computer making a noise. It was a documentary about basically juvenile delinquent bears breaking into cars and doing trash cans and all this kind of stuff. And it was just this bear trundling along a path in the forest, doing bear stuff. And he looks up, and there is a backpack suspended maybe 15 feet above the floor of the path.
Like they tell you to do. Yeah.
And I swear, almost a camera, this bear just goes... boosts up to his full height, which is basically his nose is level with like the middle of this backpack, pulls this huge climb-a-ply rope apart like I would break apart a cookie, and just walks off with this backpack full of stuff.
Like shaking his head.
Yeah, it's just like, God.
English people being exposed to the American wilderness is my new favorite. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, I'll tell you the really embarrassing one because it's kind of funny. There is a place in Yosemite called Glacier Point, and the floor of the valley is 4,000 feet above sea level.
So Yosemite Valley is
on camera.
No, I don't want to.
Okay.
I did take a shit. Yosemite Valley is 6,000 feet at the valley floor, 6,000 feet elevation, and the high country goes up to between 8 and 14,000 feet. So when you come into the valley, it takes most people a day or two to acclimatize. And my family's been camping in Yosemite for 50, 60 years, and we always go up into the high country. So the first day we're there, Glacier Point is one of the observation areas. It's about another 2,500 feet up from the valley floor, and it looks over the campsite where we're going to stay for the night. So we take the little shuttle
Like right
trolley.
over, like physically, it is just 2,000 feet higher.
If you've ever seen the famous picture of a can-can dancer on a rock over the valley floor, that's Glacier Point. That's the lookout area. So we take the little shuttle up and go out to have a look. Go ahead, tell your story.
Okay, so there's this slope which drops away, and then there's a little bit of kind of flat, and then there is nothing for 2,000 feet. And this is, I think, maybe my fourth day in America. And I watch as Marguerite hops this fence, wanders out of sight, and from my perspective, plummets to her death.
Because of the perspective, you guys have played, a lot of you played Animal Crossing. You go down quite a slope to the observation area and then it drops off. So where Alistair's standing at the top, it looks like there is nothing behind me. I watch every ounce of color drain from him. He turns slate gray in seconds. And he's like, "Can you please come away from the edge?" It was the cutest thing.
I looked like an unconvincing pencil drawing of myself. It was brilliant.
Yeah. You were very shaken, and you wouldn't go anywhere near the edge.
And I was like, "No, I'm fine. The railing is 30 feet that way. That's as much as I want to push right now." I believe you've been to the top of Half Dome, haven't you?
No, I've never been up Half Dome.
I thought you had.
No, I have aunts and uncles who have, but I never have.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to, but these days, it's unfortunately one part tourist trap and one part extremely long waiting list because they're trying to they have erosion problems being caused by the amount of people who want to go up it. So they've severely limited the traffic now. Yeah.
But yes, bears, man, they're the best and also the worst.
Exactly.
Let me see. There was something that we were talking about, which I was
bears, camping, American anecdotes.
American anecdotes. No, because the only other one
other than you turn into Hugh Laurie every time you talk to people.
Oh, it's not every time I talk to people. It's just every time I go to a firing range. Okay, if we're doing this, about 6 years ago, one of my oldest, dearest friends got married in Vegas, and he is powdered. He is the whitest human being I've ever met. And he lives in Texas quite happily, and I'm still not quite sure how, or in some cases why. But we had the wedding weekend in Vegas, and for the kind of pre-day activities, the groomsmen got to go to a firing range, and the bridal party got to go play with construction equipment.
I have a brilliant photo of me playing basketball with a giant bucket scoop on a piece of construction equipment.
And they'd actually they rebuilt these like cranes and diggers, so they had lazy boys and were air conditioned.
No, they're like that already.
Really?
It's great.
Oh,
yeah.
fantastic. Meanwhile, Muggins over here walks into a firing range in the US and hand on a stack of Bibles. The first thing I see is their own personal YouTube channel, which is shooting in a studio in the back. The first filming. The first words I hear when I come in are, "So, you've just shot and killed an intruder in your home, and the police are yelling at you. Here's why you should calm down." And I'm just like...
all the color trades from his face again. Yeah, exactly.
I look around, and I realize that what I'm actually in is a ballistic tapas restaurant, where there are packages, and you can pick guns that you want to shoot. And obviously the groom goes, "I will have one of everything, thank you, please." And I get to the counter, and have you seen the Simpsons episode with this exchange in it? "Is the siren good? When have you ever heard a siren be good, Mr. Simpson?" I've had that. I've had that exact exchange. Seriously. Because I get to the counter and I'm like, hi, I'd just like to shoot a 9mm, please. And the guy who is about my build looks at me like, you sure? Yeah. Okay. And he's like, all right, here you go. We all get walked through to the back, and my friend Whit is there with his literal barrow of World War II firearms. And the instructor comes in and goes, which one of you is Alistair? And I'm just like, oh, God.
I'm doomed.
Put my hand up. He comes up to me, shakes my hand and goes, do you trust me, sir? And I'm like,
do I have a choice?
And he's like, respectfully, a man of your build should not be using this weapon. I can find a weapon which will be more comfortable for you. Would you be happy using that? And I'm like, does it mean I get to leave earlier? It does. I'm in! And he hands me this freaking hand cannon, which, you know...
It was a Desert Eagle, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
He
was.
He gave you a 50 cal Desert Eagle.
Yeah, like freaking 50 caliber Desert Eagle, and we shoot at zombie clowns for 10 minutes and then go and have a burger. That was a weird day.
I had a much better time.
You had a much better time.
Pedicures and construction equipment. It was great. Yes.
I had terror and mild masculine insecurity.
Yay, Vegas.
You know what I think it might be time for? I think it's time. It's time for shenanigans.
Nice.
Shenanigans. Oh, I forgot you have a touchscreen.
No, but the laptop's a touchscreen. The
right.
monitor is not a touchscreen. But you forgot the big transition screen.
Oh, hold on.
Hold on. Ta-da! Okay, now
I'm not done. Bum, bum, bum. Okay.
Do we need a shenanigans?
Well, I mean,
song?
it has just been requested.
I'll have to ask Ryan. Go back to the one that says camera. There you go. Okay.
All right.
Now,
Okay.
here. And then all of these. So we didn't have any kind of like designated shenanigans for this week. So I do what I always do, which is I go to Tumblr.
Hey! Okay, this is from Cloud Dad on Tumblr. And I will read the entire entry and yeah. Honestly, Peter and Elias being married makes season 4 so much funnier, considering that Peter not only was trying to get Martin to kill him, but also that Elias, agreed to that. He really went to his husband and was like, let's make a bet. If I win, the world ends, and if I lose, you can kill me. And Peter, like a doting husband, goes, sure, sounds fun.
Very Yorkshire Peter there, wasn't it?
A little bit.
I like this one.
This is shortened to the point from I am a man and I confess I fake, which is why call it Lonely Eyes when you could call it I, Captain?
I like that one a lot. Did you just finger guns at the camera?
I might
they can
have.
See you,
I
you
might.
Realize?
That's why I did it.
Oh, okay. Do it again. There you go. Do.
Yeah, baby.
Oh, tell that story.
What about the guy?
Yeah.
Okay, this is the single greatest piece of cosplay commitment I have ever seen in my life. This is back in the before times where people went to London and travelled through train stations. And there's one particular train station which is like 850,000 miles long.
It's St. Pancras.
It's St. Pancras, and it's all one corridor, and it's about it is seriously like 600-700 meters, isn't it?
It's just forever.
Okay, so we're walking along, chatting away, and behind us, like the herald of an unusually disco velour apocalypse, we hear faintly, yeah, baby! And we're like... And of course, it being me, I'm like, perhaps that was just in my head. It's okay. It gets louder and louder, and then we watch as this full-bore, 150,000% committed Austin Powers cosplayer shimmies past us, like genuinely
full bit routine.
Cuban heels, appalling hair, dreadful teeth, pair of with two friends, both of whom were in identical silver foil outfits, all go-go dancing. He gets to the
1:30 in the morning, something like that.
He gets to the ticket barrier, and the guy at the ticket barrier, and any of you who've ever encountered anyone on public transport just knows no one has a I am just filling in my time look like someone on a public transport ticket barrier, Gets to the guy, slams his Oyster card through, does the full double finger guns, goes, "Yeah, baby!" And to his eternal credit, the guy high-fives him. Austin roars with triumph and boogies off at double speed down the remainder of St. Pancras. And we were just like, carry on, my wayward son, you know?
Yeah. That was a heck of a detour, but that's what you get for finger guns.
Exactly. No worries, Mer, enjoy.
Have a good one, Mark, good night. This one's a side gag, unfortunately. Can you put that link in the chat? Because you're steering. There you go.
Okay, so I put this.
Right there. There we go.
Here.
We're learning live on screen.
We get married. A minor inconvenience happens. We get divorced. Elias needs money. Circle of life.
Yeah, exactly. I like that one a lot. I don't have a source on that, unfortunately.
I love his little
The Elias cycle. Yeah, that's a very good name for it. I agree. I liked this one and this one.
Okay.
So this is from Alice/Heather, and it's called All Hail the Mysterious Gap.
So just these top two.
Just these top two. Yeah, I liked these a lot. By the way, there will be swearing. Sorry.
Okay. I also apologize in advance, as I clearly should have done to Ben last week. This week to Johnny Big Streams. Hold on, this might take a little bit of a warm up.
Oh gosh.
Yes.
How do you warm up for that?
Carefully. Oh no, wait, there he is. Statement of a bitch-ass boyfriend stealing divorced man hamfuck motherfucker regarding his activities as a massive bitch. I'm sorry.
Maybe you
I'm going to go out. I'm going to come back in. I go out. I come back. It's okay. Okay. John. Statement of a bitch-ass boyfriend stealing divorced man hamfuck motherfucker regarding his activities as a massive bitch. Peter Lucas.
That wasn't me. That was not my fault.
Okay. Hold on. Just Peter Lucas and his interactions with the lonely would be fine. John, no. Fuck you. Statement begins. I'm quite happy with that.
Yeah.
I'm quite happy with that. That's all right. That's all right.
There's another one. Let's do one more.
Okay, we'll do one more. Peter, I've prepared Martin. John, pulling Martin out of the lonely. You fucked up a perfectly good archival assistant is what you've done. Look at him, he's depressed.
Oh, people are very happy with your Johnny Big Streams impersonation, apparently. Great.
Oh, God.
Oh, dear.
Okay. Do we have anything else?
You look at me like this is my fault. Look at him, he's depressed. You messed up a perfectly good archival assistant.
I'll do another run at that one because I was a little too pleased with myself with that.
Okay.
Peter, I've prepared Martin. John, pulling Martin out of the lonely. You fucked up a perfectly good archival assistant is what you've done. Look at him, he's depressed. There we are.
There we go. Feel
Great. That's good.
Feel a little more shenanigans there.
I think that's about our time, isn't it?
I think that's what we've got for everybody this week.
First of all, thank you so much, folks. This is a blast. We're both really, really enjoying starting this. We don't have Beeves started, although I do love Beeves plural. Beeves. I've never been so happy to hear something twice. Aw, thank you. We are also doing a regular Sunday video game stream, which is morning our time, and I can give you no more specific a time than that.
Because it's Sunday.
It's Sunday, guys.
Sometimes we need the sleeps.
But we actually just started playing a new game there, which is Concrete Genie, which is incredibly pretty, about this kid who uncovers the ability to bring his adorable, oblong, weird paintings to life and use them to save the soul of the small fishing town he's trapped in. It's really, really, really nice. and we're having a lot of fun with it.
Yeah. So we'll be doing that for the next probably couple of weeks because you did one area last time and that took a couple hours. So we'll probably be playing that for a bit.
It looks... It's weird in terms of kind of engagement and interaction. It's very it's very Untitled Goose Game in that it's a thing where you can do a very finite amount of stuff in 2 hours and also have a very satisfying experience. But there are no gooses. There is no fancy lad.
You might be able to draw a genie goose.
I would love to be able to draw a genie goose. That would make me very happy.
Yeah.
And then we'll be back here next Wednesday at exactly this time. It's all right. I mean, honestly, one of the things that we're still kind of coming to grips with Twitch is the brilliant thing of you miss a stream. Well, here it is on VOD, and it's not quite the same, I know, but it is there, and that feels weirdly familiar to me. It feels like being able to catch a TV show on catch up, and I kind of dig on that.
And I think...
Yes, also trans rights and Black Lives Matter. Absolutely.
Yay.
Yay. And that's it. We have a Twitter stream for you, which will go live shortly with a couple of extra links. There's a thing which almost made it in there, which I completely forgot about, which is I saw a fantastic horror movie today called The Hole in the Ground, which is very this in terms of tone, and it's on Amazon Prime at the moment. So if you have access to that, check it out, because it's really, really good. And I'll write a little bit more about that in next week's Twitter stream. In the meantime, please join us on Sunday if you can, because that's really fun. And thank you so much for coming along for this. This is massive fun. This is one of the genuine highlights of our week, and that's entirely down to you guys, you folks, and also Marguerite, obviously, and my mischief being well and truly enabled. And I do so love it when my mischief is enabled.
Yeah, and by all means, feel free to send shenanigan candidates our way.
Oh, we always take requests.
Careful about that. But yes, requests can definitely be sent our direction. I mean, Tumblr can only get me so far.
It can get you pretty far.
Yeah, well, one of these days, somebody is actually going to write the Creepypasta Goose Game story, and then that can be like its own
You are
thing.
methodically willing that into life, aren't you?
Yes!
It's really impressive.
Yes, exactly. Ooh, well, Candidate, hang on.
Oh.
Evaluation.
I can hear my inner Elias voice surfacing.
Oh, it's not loading. I'll come back and...
Martin, bring me cheese. The cheap stuff.
What?
I think that's a line to go out on. Thank you, folks. Have a safe and fun week, and we will see you next time.